For this lesson, open the project 10B. A transition is a way of getting from one thing to another. To apply the default transition, just select an edit point, go to Effects, Default Cross Dissolve, or use the shortcut Command-T. Hit Command-Z to undo, and this time, from the Effects tab, drag the cross dissolve onto the edit point. Hit Command-Z to undo, and this time, Control-click the edit point and select Add Transition Cross Dissolve. All methods apply the default duration of 1 second. Change the duration of a transition by clicking and dragging in the timeline, or by right-clicking the transition and selecting Duration. Enter a new value and hit Return twice. Control-clicking the transition also gives you the option to change the alignment. This 1 second transition is centered on the edit point by default, but you can make it start or end on the edit point. Double-click on the transition to open the transition editor in the viewer. The outgoing clip is on top, the incoming clip on the bottom, and the transition is sandwiched in between. The vertical line indicates the edit point, and the dark blue areas indicate the frames in use. The light blue areas represent the handles, or unused frames available outside the edit point. The handle length for both clips must be at least half the length of the transition duration, or you'll have to roll the edit point or change the alignment to make it work. Click here to change the alignment back to centered on edit. As in the timeline, you can change the duration of the transition by dragging it, or by entering a numerical value. When you mouse over the middle of the transition, the cursor changes to the Roll tool, and you can roll the transition and edit point forward and backward in time. It also loads the 2-up display in the canvas, showing you the beginning and end frames of the transition as you move. Now, mouse over the out point of the outgoing clip. The cursor changes to a Ripple tool, allowing you to ripple the edit with the transition along for the ride. The transition editor also has a drag hand, just like audio clips. So once you have it the way you like it, you can drag the transition onto a new edit point. The area below the blue bars contains transition controls, with room for custom parameters specific to the transition applied. Click back in the timeline, and hit the End key or function right arrow to go to the end of the sequence. In the browser, double-click Clip 4 to open it in the viewer. Scrub to the middle, and hit I to mark an in. Shift right arrow twice to advance 2 seconds, and hit O to mark an out. Drag it onto the canvas, and in the overlay, drop it onto the overwrite box that says With Transition. The clip appears in the timeline with the default transition applied. Once applied, you can move a transition to a new edit point by dragging and dropping. Transitions can be copied and pasted by control-clicking for the copy and paste commands in the contextual menu, or by option dragging. To delete a transition, select it and just hit the Delete key. Or right-click and select the Cut command, or go to the Edit menu and select Clear. You can use the cross dissolve on the beginning or end of a clip to fade in or fade out. Let's try it with the beginning and the end of this sequence. Control-click the in point of the first clip and select Cross Dissolve. Right-click again for the duration window and type 20 frames and hit Return twice. Do the same for the last clip. Now, play the fades. Instead of using frames from another clip, the clip blends with black over time. You can quickly add a transition to both the head and tail of a clip by dragging the transition to the clip's midsection instead of the edit points. You can use this technique to replace the transitions on either side with a different transition. Or replace only one by dragging your new choice on top of an existing transition. Open Sequence 2 for a longer version of this timeline. There are 17 cuts in this sequence, and I want to add a cross dissolve on all of them, including the in and out points of the sequence. Sound time consuming? Not at all. Just hit Command A to select all, and hit Command T to add the default transition. Hit Command Z to undo. The items are still selected. This time, drag the transition of your choice from the Effects tab onto the selected clips. Hit Command Z to undo. We've been working mainly with the default transition. In the Effects tab, under Video Transitions, go to the Dissolve bin. See the underline under Cross Dissolve? That indicates the default transition. You can reset this by Control-clicking on any transition and selecting Set Default Transition, or by selecting a transition in the Effects tab and going to Effects, and in the Video Transition section, choose Set Default. If you change your mind, select Clear Default in the same section of the menu, or go back to Cross Dissolve, right-click, and reset the default. Now that you have a general understanding of how transitions work, take a few moments to try some out, and make a note of the ones you like, because next we'll learn how to save them as favorites.